Hi, my name is David Sibbett, and I am responding to Libby's response to my affirmative that the dams, along the lower Snake River, should be removed in order to help with salmon recovery. I want to start by saying that Libby made a lot of great points in her speech, and that definitely brought to light some facts that I missed on my original speech. But I still stand on the same point that while the lower Snake River dams provide some benefits, their overall environmental and economic impacts outweigh their advantages, especially when it comes to salmon. Maintaining these dams definitely creates significant harm to ecosystems, undermines long-term sustainability, and ignores more efficient solutions to agriculture and transportation. The first point I want to touch on is Libby's point that the dams produce clean, renewable energy that supports the fight against climate change. I did mention this in my first speech, but I'll mention it again. That these dams do produce a lot of energy, around 1,000 megawatts of energy per year. Again, that's enough to fuel multiple Seattles in one given year, but they're also very wasteful in producing energy. So again, they actually produce total around 3,000 megawatts of energy, but only 1,000 of those megawatts can actually be stored, harvested, and transported away from that facility, again leading to a lot of waste. So there is definitely really leeway for room to improve there. We could definitely work on ways to harvest that a lot better to make this operation more profitable, or just make it so that we don't have as many dams, and then we only produce exactly 1,000 every year anyways. These dams also, while producing a lot of energy, are getting old. They are decades old at this point, and the cost of maintaining and repairing these dams every single day, month, year weighs on the state, and they cost a lot of money to maintain. And as of right now, they are not profiting nearly as much as they were profiting 20 years ago. And then finally, these dams. Again, she made the point that these are safe and renewable energy sources that are good for the climate. These dams are actually very bad for the climate as of right now. Not only do they stop the flow of water, which, as I mentioned in my first speech, flowing water is necessary for regulating temperature throughout in the areas that they flow along. When water becomes stagnant, the heat is not moving, so heat travels through the water, and when the water moves, it takes the heat away, bringing in space for more cold air, a colder climate, which is good for that area. When the water is stagnant, it actually creates a little bit of heat in the area, a lot of heat in the area where it would usually reduce the temperature. Again, it contributes very poorly to global warming, and we don't want that. I want to touch on the next point where Libby made, which I didn't really touch on in my original speech, was that dams provide water for irrigation, and it's very essential for farmers in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. I do grant that these dams do provide a lot of resources for these farmers in those areas. Farmers can actually there are different, more advanced, and a lot safer and a lot more efficient ways of getting water and using irrigation nowadays that have been put in practice in other areas. Farmers can use groundwater or upgraded irrigation systems, and that are less harmful to the environment. And again, other areas have had a success in using these different sources of irrigation. Again, while it would require a lot of adjustment, and again, it would not be cheap to set up these irrigations, the state can actually use the money that it's spending on these dams in order to put the state can actually use the money that they have been putting into these dams towards building these irrigation systems. Again, that would be a very feasible and very regulated thing that could definitely happen within the next few years if we stop providing resources to these dams that are not profitable. And again, bringing up the fact that dams are really bad for the environment, it also affects the farmers as well. The flowing water used to provide a lot of ways to get rid of degrading soil and overuse soil. Again, when you overuse and soil becomes degraded, you can't really farm on it anymore. So flowing water used to have the effect of it would take the soil away, especially when it rained. The soil would flood in, and then it would get carried away, and then new soil would be brought down from upriver, and then again the recycle would rinse and repeat all over time. But nowadays, that soil is not being replaced, so it becomes actually a lot more expensive for these farmers to have to replace the soil in their area, and it also makes it so that these farmers are less profitable when they do use this degraded soil. And again, this is ultimately harming the farming areas for the agriculture for these farming areas. On top of that, again, very bad for the global warming, and again, it's just hurting the ecosystem in the areas that they provide. Um, Again, the final point I want to bring up about Libby was that these dams do provide systems of transportation directly regarding barging. Again, they do actually they do provide the ability for barges to move upstream and move agricultural products and other things along the Snake River. But recently the reliance on barging has decreased, and the reliance on other things like using trucks and railroads has increased. So again, barging used to be a very popular form of transportation. Nowadays that has declined, and more reliance on trucks and railroads have increased. Again, that in this of itself is not necessarily good for the environment, as like it's been a big point of mine, but they're already using it, right? There's no point, and more and more people are going away from using barging for transportation. There's no real point to keep them around if it's not really being used for that purpose anymore. Again, that's just to refute that argument itself. Again, I do want to also bring up I do also want to bring up the fact that yes, a lot of my speech was focused on the non benefits, the negatives of having dams. But the true point of my original speech was that we want these dams to be removed mainly to help out with salmon recovery. And again, she didn't really touch on that in her speech, but I do want to reiterate that these dams are mainly being brought up in point, and they are actually available. Like people are paying attention to it now, is because that they are hurting the salmon population. And it is no doubt, and there's no 100% of the evidence is in support of this, that if we remove these dams, along the Snake River, the salmon population will increase. And again, while these dams are still in place, the salmon population cannot increase, and they will naturally fall to dangerous levels of population over time. And myself, as someone who eats a lot of salmon and goes fishing all the time, I would love it if these salmon were around in the next 20 years. Again, Libby made a lot of great points in her speech, but I still firmly believe that the dams along the lower Snake River should be removed.